Chapter 13. Shino practiced with his new trick every day, and found that as long as he was in snake form, the cold wouldn't kill off his hive. Something that pleased Haku to no end. Though he did find a problem with his new Japanese wasp hive. After a few training sessions with his girlfriend, Shino found his new hive rather testy and hard to handle. They didn't respond to cold well at all, and he tried to avoid bringing them out in situations when a drone could die. The Japanese wasps responded to the death of their own rather badly, often turning into the insect equivalent of piranhas and killing everything in sight. Only the Aburame clan was safe from that problem, and even then they were careful not to use them in the field too often. If Shino didn't care about his hive so much, then he would have killed off the Japanese wasps in his hive for safety reasons. As it was, he wasn't going to use them again unless he absolutely had to. Fortunately, the wasps were rather vulnerable to lightning, which meant his lightning bugs could get rid of them within minutes if he lost control of the hive. Snape filled out the paperwork, and waited to head to Konoha. Dumbledore wanted the Potter boy at Hogwarts at any cost. Which was why Snape had filled out the paperwork under his name. If Dumbledore wanted Shino so badly, he was going to have to pay for the boy to attend. And even then, they would mostly be doing reconnaissance work. Shino and his team would be scouting the magical communities for people willing to tutor the rest of the village in magic. It was something that perked the interest of the Hokage, and it kept Dumbledore from trying to force them to stay. Snape would be the one to take them shopping for supplies, and he was going to avoid Ollivanders when it came time for wands. The last thing the shinobi needed was to have ministry tracers on them. Shino's team was called in once Snape filed a mission request. While Dumbledore had agreed to pay for the mission, it was Snape who was designated as the client. Tsunade found that trick rather amusing, since Dumbledore clearly had no idea how much an S-ranked mission would cost. Best of all, the old man couldn't back out, because he had signed off without reading the paperwork. The goblins would ensure the shinobi were well paid for their efforts. Needless to say, once the goblins learned of the shinobi communities, there was a subtle shift towards the elemental countries for the goblin clans. It wasn't an uncommon sight these days to see a goblin working side by side with a shinobi banker. The goblins found the respect given to them by fellow warriors rather refreshing. Probably why they were more than happy to give Shino the backdoor into his account, which he had no idea he even had. At least he now had a place to put all of his poker winnings. Shino wasn't happy. It was simple really. He hated the cold with a fierce and fiery passion that only Haku or Naruto could calm. And yet here he was, trying not to flinch at the noise level of this Quidditch World Cup. He had to keep reminding himself that he was on a mission, and wasn't allowed to skewer people to shut them up. Here he paused, because he realized he really shouldn't hang out with Anko so much. Anko was having a better time of it, having somehow gained the position of Dada teacher at the school they were stuck at. Technically she would be teaching alongside another, who had come at Dumbledore's request. Strangely enough, Alastair Moody rather liked the shinobi, who followed his doctrine of constant vigilance every time they woke up. Naruto was already gone, having found kindred spirits in a pair of identical twins. Hinata had followed him, if only to make sure he didn't get lost on the way back. Sasuke, the only person who wasn't on his team, was out getting the water. He was also trying not to strangle the youngest son of the Weasley brood. Though Shino was very surprised to see Sasuke flirting with the brunette Hermione. Haku was still reading, which meant he had to deal with a migraine himself. Alas, he couldn't sick his hive on the rowdy people. They had been given tents near the Weasley clan, who they would be staying with until they went to the school. Shino would almost feel sorry for the school. If he didn't want to head home in the first place. He hated the cold. Shino and Naruto were quite possibly the only males unaffected by the Vila. Then again, they had girlfriends who would cheerfully murder them in their sleep if they did more than ogle them. Hinata knew way too many scary tricks with her Kekkei Genkai. Her father had been very informative once he realized there was little chance his daughter would fall for someone other than Naruto. Since it was obvious Hinata had a crush on Naruto, which was reciprocated by the boy in question, he made very sure that Naruto would never think of cheating on his daughter. It made for a very interesting conversation, to say the least. Shino's mother had a similar conversation with Haku and Kin. Shino honestly didn't expect the sound girl to fall for him. Though thankfully Haku had no problems with the idea. Shino didn't really see the appeal. He dealt with genjutsu all the time, so illusions made it rather boring. Naruto, on the other hand, was one of the few shinobi who could be unaffected by illusions. Or fall so deeply into it that it would take foreign chakra to break it. It was usually a toss-up, but Shino had noted a pattern. Naruto never fell for one of Kurenai-sensei's illusions, but he always fell for Shino's. He suspected it was because Kurenai was female. It was rather odd. Shino noted the looks Hinata and Haku were giving the two of them, so he checked on Sasuke. He shouldn't have bothered. Years of dealing with fangirls had immunized the Uchiha boy to females, which was why he was one of the few shinobi males whose eyes never strayed to the Hokage's rather impressive bust. Shino secretly suspected the boy was either gay, or at the very least bi. Hermione Granger was shooting dark looks at Ron, who was clearly falling hard for the Vila. She noted his look, and beamed at all three of them for not acting like total idiots. Shino discreetly nodded towards Haku and Hinata, and she got the message. He found the game interesting, but not very exciting. The only position that seemed like it would be fun was the one that had the bats. When he commented on that, the twins had beamed at him, and he learned that they played that same position on their house team. It was more or less how he finally learned their names. While Shino was discussing the beater's position on the team, he heard the distinct sound of screaming outside. The others had heard it as well, but it was Haku who dared to investigate. She was closest to the tent opening. She came back in, shocked. Battle outside, grab the kunai. Anko grinned evilly. All right Gaki, try to avoid the civilians and non-combatants. There is another option, Anko-senpai, said Shino. She looked at him. He held up a container that sloshed when he moved it. Is that ... what I think it is? She asked slowly. The strongest brand I could get, and it's already sweetened, said Shino. Right. Make sure he stays away from the tents, she said, shaking her head. It was almost too cruel for words, but it would keep Naruto quiet for a few days. Naruto cocked his head, but once he recognized the scent in the canister he looked at his cousin in surprise. I thought I wasn't allowed to have that anymore? We're outside Konoha. It's not our problem. If anyone asks, the twins gave it to you. Yeah, they seem like the sort, nodded Naruto sagely. He recognized a prankster when he saw one. He downed 2 cups, then went outside and waited for it to take effect. They didn't have to wait long. Very quickly, there was a new type of screaming, and it wasn't from the civilians. There was a reason why Naruto was banned from having coffee within the limits of Konoha. Arthur Weasley, watching in horror as a blonde and orange blur devastated the Death Eaters. He went into the tent horrified and noted that a certain guest was missing. He put 2 and 2 together, but he still had to confirm it. Please tell me that isn't. It depends. Are you asking if that's Naruto, or are you asking if it's a new enemy? Asked Shino levelly. Right. What did the twins give him, despite my orders to not bring their pranks with them? We didn't bring anything, Dad. Complained Fred. He did, said George, pointing at Shino. I merely brought something to keep me awake. I lay no claim for its whereabouts at this time, said Shino promptly. I would ask if he's all right, but at this point I think it's the Death Eaters who should be pitied, said Arthur. He had seen that look before, and it wasn't pretty. It had been the time the twins had learned of a fizzy mull drink called soda. Molly had banned it from ever entering the house twice. 20 minutes later, Anko dared to go outside the tent and whistled at the destruction. There was a very, very good reason Naruto was never allowed to drink coffee or sugar. And never at the same time. The effects alone were roughly the same as when Lee got drunk on a small cup of weak sake. Only it was magnified 100 times over. Naruto had been considerate enough to avoid most of the tents. But the place was almost leveled. Nearly 15 of the attackers were laid out groaning in absolute pain. After they were arrested, all they would say was it was a joke. But they would be screaming in fear whenever they saw the color orange. Naruto was absolutely more terrifying than the Kyuubi whenever someone gave him coffee that was sweetened with pure sugar. Something Konoha, and the Anbu in particular, had learned the hard way when he was 8. Fortunately for the village, the third had managed to keep the devastation localized at the time. And Naruto respected him enough not to drink it within village limits again. What the Hokage didn't know was that every time Shino and his team left village limits, Shino brought a canister of hot coffee with plenty of sugar. He always brought with him just in case. The one time he forgot it was the mission in Wave. Though to be fair, Kurena had asked him not to bring it. She didn't want Naruto accidentally destroying the bridge. Orange Demon takes out Death Eaters. Foreign exchange students at the World Cup. Shino read the article with amusement. This was definitely going on his wall. Anko had kept a copy for herself. Why, you ask? There was a black and white photo of Naruto going ballistic on the Death Eaters, complete with his shadow clone technique. He didn't use any of his elemental tricks, but he sure gave them one hell of a beatdown. Every time he watched the photo he got the evil maniacal giggles. Unfortunately, it made everyone on his team stay far from him. Because he sounded disturbingly like Anko. On the plus side, Sasuke ended up becoming good friends with Hermione Granger. And it was pretty obvious that Ron Weasley was very jealous of that fact. Ron didn't seem to realize that the new exchange students were watching him closely. Sasuke in particular. His special sixth sense for stalkers kicked into overdrive whenever Ron was nearby. The days dwindled until it was time to board the train. Shino and the others had already gotten their supplies, including wands. Snape had made very sure to get their wands from Nocturne. Ollivander would have added the tracers, which would have only given the Hokage a massive headache. Despite the fact that Konoha was nowhere near the any ministry building which could pick it up. Snape knew the shinobi would need anonymity, and as long as they didn't do anything too flashy, they could cast in public without the ministry being up in arms about it. Not like they would use magic in England anyway. Shinobi were more likely to use chakra and jutsu before falling back on their magic. Dumbledore was still paranoid about Red Eyes. He had a run-in with Itachi, and they had words. Dumbledore had mistakenly believed Itachi was a foreign wizard on vacation. He was quickly corrected after trying to use legilmancy on the shinobi. Itachi wasn't too pleased about someone reading his mind, so he used his Mangekyo on the man. With the worst illusion he could possibly imagine. It had happened to him once, and he had made very sure it would never happen again. It was rather amusing really. After this particular mission, the Hokage had it restricted to all female teams. Unless one of the males happened to bat for the same team, and then they were drafted as well. The mission. Was shopping with the two nosiest old biddies in the village. The two would gossip at the same spot for a good 30 minutes about the most boring things before moving on. It was labeled a D rank because no Saint Chunin would accept this unless his life depended on it. The old ladies would needle at whatever genin team got the short end of the senbon. It was the most hated mission on the rosters. Even more hated than the Tora retrieval one, which was saying something considering it was the popular opinion of the village that the cat was a descendant of the two-tailed demon cat. Or was a cat from hell? Depending on who you asked. Dumbledore had been catatonic for a week after that, and he still had difficulty looking Mukuganagle in the eye. Shino was in the compartment with his girlfriend. They had decided to take the cars one by one, with Sasuke and Anko by themselves. Shino and Naruto had landed the same compartment with their girlfriends to prevent misunderstandings more than anything. It wasn't that they needed to, but it gave them an excuse to be alone. It wasn't like Hinata or Haku were complaining about it. Halfway through the ride, Shino saw the door open. A blonde boy with a pair of enforcers. Shino could sense the twins around the corner. They were prepared to move should the blonde try anything. "And you are?" "Malfoy. Draco Malfoy," said the blonde smugly. "Aburame Shino. This is Momoki Haku." Haku was pleased that all her friends introduced her with her former teacher's last name. It was her way of honoring Zabuza. "This is Crab and Goyle." "You're welcome to sit with us," said Shino. It was quickly apparent that Draco was an example of Bullard beliefs. He had no opinions of his own, he merely parroted them without knowing why. The twins told them that Draco was practically a clone of his father. He was such a cowardly ferret that people wanted to hex him on sight. It was Shino who made the twins laugh like hyenas though. "He's not a ferret ... he's a parrot." Haku snickered. "A what?" said Fred. "A parrot. A tropical bird that can be trained to repeat words or phrases on command. Very pretty and flashy, but no real practical use. I've seen one before. Very ... colorful." "Would you say it was rather ... flamboyant?" said Shino amused. Haku was quick to catch on to what he was getting at. "Indeed. Very flamboyant. Almost flashy in fact." It took a few minutes for the twins to cotton onto the joke. Fred started snickering, then George. "You're telling us you think he's..." "He probably bats for the same team." "He certainly acted like it," said Shino bluntly. The twins were howling with laughter, but they were comparing what they knew of Draco Malfoy. Unfortunately for the Slytherin, most of what they knew about him added to the fact that he batted for the same team. "And now, I have a very special announcement to make. There are 2 special events happening this year at Hogwarts. For the first time in 200 years, we will be hosting students from the elemental countries. Let's give them all a warm welcome." Aburame, Shino. "How interesting. The boy who lived, a shinobi. And one of the more interesting ones. Where do I go, Hatsan?" "With your bravery, I would say Gryffindor. Hyuga, Hinata. Such a loyal girl. The best place for you would be Hufflepuff. Momoki, Haku. Clever to a fault, and loyal to your friends? Where would you like to go? Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw? The Ravens have their own private library, you know." Which one was known for its loyalty again? Hufflepuff. Uchiha, Sasuke. Sasuke's fangirl radar went on overdrive the second the girls locked onto him. They had done the same with Shino, and he had a feeling Naruto would be locked on as well. At least until they found out Shino and Naruto were already taken. Well ... Shino might still have a few stalkers once it got out that Shino's girlfriend didn't have issues with threesomes. "Hello, hello, hello. I must say your brother is rather amusing to say the least." "My brother was here?" "Put the old goat under an illusion. Funniest thing I've seen in years. Dumbledore still can't look McGonagall in the eye during staff meetings. I am so going to kill Shino. With your intelligence, you'd fit in either Slytherin or Ravenclaw. Which one is less likely to stalk me?" "Ravenclaw. Use Uzumaki, Naruto." Naruto practically bounced up to the stool. A few people laughed at his bright attitude. Some stared at the orange he was wearing. A few of the children whose parents he beat up gave him speculative looks. With that much orange, it was no wonder their fathers were still screaming about an orange demon. If only they knew. The hat wasn't even on Naruto for a moment when it yelled Gryffindor. loudly. Naruto bounded up to his cousin and sat between him and the twins.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you guys want to watch more like it, please subscribe to my channel and become part of the video game fanfiction plot. And please leave a comment down below and hit that like button. If you guys have any suggestions on any stories you guys want me to read, don't hesitate. They're always welcome here in the video game fanfic plot. That also goes for video games. Until next time, goodbye!